Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation and episode. We're going to be getting into a really cool article that just came out this year, January 7th of 2026. And this came out of the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition. It's the impact of intermittent fasting during weight reduction in people living with type 2 diabetes, a randomized clinical trial. So if you do not have type 2 diabetes, don't check out on this episode just yet. Because our intention today is to, as always, make it actionable, digestible, but we're going to apply it to the general population as well in terms of our intermittent fasting lifestyle and what we teach, preach, and live here in the FFL, Fasting for Life world. So I'm excited. The nuance of the article, we're going to get into the clinical outcomes, but we're most importantly going to talk about big picture of how this applies to anyone who's trying to lose weight, get healthy. And obviously, you folks that are, dealing with blood sugar issues, prediabetes, diabetes, this is going to be a really actionable episode for you as well. So if you are new, head back to episode 1, give it a listen. Episode 0, episode 1. That'll give you a little bit of insight into how fasting transformed my life and Tommy's life. And I was an undiagnosed prediabetic, so this episode really hits home with me.
Yep.
On my journey 5-6 years ago now. And then if you're a long-term listener, man, just buckle up. This is going to be a good one. I'm excited for you. Thank you for being a part of our journey as well. We are on this fasting lifestyle journey with you. So grateful for you tuning in again this week. So, Tommy, with that kind of long-winded introduction, I want to set the stage of why this matters to each and every one of us. If you're carrying the extra weight, and you ultimately want to get off that dieting roller coaster, and you want to reach your forever number, and just know that you're on the right path. The reality of the state of the union right now from a metabolic standpoint when it comes to blood sugar issues is about 97 to 115 million U.S. adults. Roughly 1 in 3 to 4 have prediabetes.
Wow.
And the CDC and the NIDDK both cite 97.6 million adults 18 plus. So about 38% of adults back in 2021, and we know that we're trending up. So about 115 million Americans, 18 plus. And the problem is that the CDC clearly states that more than 8 in 10 adults with prediabetes are unaware of it. So if 100 million adults have prediabetes, roughly 80 million are likely undiagnosed. This was me 6 years ago. So that's why I said, if you are not the category of, well, this is a diabetes episode, I'll check out next week. No, we want to talk about how this subset of data doesn't only apply if you are a type 2 diabetic on metformin, right?
Yeah.
But how it applies to the bigger picture. Because the reality is, how do I want to say this? I knew how I wanted to say it before we started. But the more weight you have to lose, the more complex your metabolic state, if you are dealing with prediabetes or diabetes, a lot of the times we feel we need the more aggressive, all-in type approach to fix it.
Yeah. Some more drastic measure, right? And then we see and hear, and I mean, Super Bowl weekend, you see all the commercials for all the medications. I saw so many GLP-1 medications and pills now, not just the shots, but pills. And
never mind all the food advertisements. There's literally, is it Insta?
Yeah.
No, it's
I think it was Uber Eats that had a big
Yeah, Uber
one.
Eats.
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey was literally being
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, football isn't about food. Football isn't about food. Football." It was the whole ad, and it was a food delivery service. I'm
Sure.
like, what genius marketing, right? So go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, and the more that the bigger the issue that we're trying to solve, the more drastic we think that the method is going to need to be to solve it. And especially if you're going in, you're having conversations with your doctor, your provider, and maybe you're thinking about a gastric sleeve or a bypass, or there's surgery over
More
here,
medications.
yeah, all of these things. And what I love about this study is it goes to the further end, the more extreme end of the blood sugar mismanagement and dysregulation, and obesity or morbid obesity, and then starts to look at, okay, what if we take a very approachable, doable method of just a systematized way. What are the effects going to be? And
Yep.
I love that approach with respect to fasting, because so oftentimes we kind of can step into fasting for whatever reasons, and a lot of times it has to do with dropping a few pounds or getting a little bit better, optimal blood work. Maybe the blood work didn't come back so well, right?
Better blood sugar
And
management,
exactly,
better energy, less
yeah,
cravings,
right.
all the
And,
stuff that goes along with carrying that extra weight over the years.
and sometimes it can really feel like, especially as you get more experience with fasting, that, well, in order to get the needle to move, I'm just going to have to do a longer fast. Like the needle only moves if I go beyond 24 hours, or
Yep.
insert whatever self-talk, whatever kind of story you have right here. And sometimes that's the case for real, but sometimes it's just it's a matter of slippage and fasting fatigue, and just frustration
And
with
too much information, right? Too many
right.
inputs.
It can definitely fall into that category. So I like this study for a lot of those reasons, where we get to see how does the needle move even in some of the worse off patient population, because
Yep.
any level of blood sugar mismanagement is just a step along a trajectory. So
Yep.
it's not that these people are so different than you if you don't have diabetes. It's that they're much further along potentially on the blood sugar mismanagement, but that doesn't make it less reversible or less fixable,
Right.
with some of the same methods. So that's where I love the connections and the parallels here for anybody listening.
We just talked about, oh man, I need more strictness. I need more fasting. I need more intervention. I need more of that aggressive type strategy. Well, this study is really a nice counter narrative to the I need the extreme measure mindset,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And I did the same thing. I hired a really expensive, very well-known functional nutritionist here in Houston when I was struggling, and before I knew I had insulin resistance, and was technically an undiagnosed pre-diabetic, even though my A1C and my FBS, my fasting blood sugar, or FBG, fasting blood glucose, was still within those normal ranges.
Yeah.
Well, I hired him and we did a 6-month intensive. So I even fell into this mindset, this trap, right? More
Yeah.
restriction, more. And we really want to encourage you that is not the case. So let's go over just the outline of the study. This population was 99 adults, 21 to 60, in the obese BMI category, 30 all the way up to 50. So now we're talking about people that have a significant amount of weight to lose.
Sure.
Now remember, this is going to be a very, very, very low. So comparing the more high intense, invasive, aggressive things we just mentioned, this is going to be a very low intense kind of wading into the kiddie pool type approach.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. We're going to highlight some of the things we would love to see different about it too, to get better outcomes, even though these outcomes are really good.
Right.
So BMI 30 to 50 with type 2 diabetes on only metformin. So no insulin interventions here.
Okay.
For at least 1 year. So no insulin or anti-hyperglycemics. And this study was mostly in women, 96% female, which was really cool. So it was 12 weeks, single-centered, randomized, open-label trial in Cairo, which was really cool. And there were two groups. There was the intermittent fasting plus caloric restriction group versus just the caloric restriction group alone. Both with identical macronutrient targets. This is where we preach a little bit different here, but this was 45% carb, 20 now it's a diabetic study, so some of you are already going, wait a minute, the recommendation was 45% carbohydrates? What? 20% protein, and 35% fat. This is one of the better studies, Tommy, that we've seen. And we've noticed this trend over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Because earlier studies would have 50 to 55% carb,
Yep.
10 to 15% protein, and
Exactly.
typically 30 to 35% fat. So I love the fact that we're starting to see more studies. And we did a bunch of them back in the beginning of 2025 in January of protein-based studies. So this protein number, this 20% protein number, and we're going to talk about this with the body mass changes and the lean body mass and the fat mass and all the weight loss that was seen. So this is a really like a trend that we love, is seeing this protein number kick up and the carb number come down, because carbs stimulate the most insulin or blood sugar response, right?
Yeah.
And both had a very mild 500 caloric deficit day to day. So intermittent fasting plus caloric restriction versus caloric restriction alone. And here's the kicker. It was a 12-hour nightly fast from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m.
That's it.
That was it. So wait a minute. What were the results? We're going to get there in just a second. The primary outcome was absolute change in A1C. So the 90-day rolling average of where that glucose is in that primary spot on your red blood cells. So really, how much blood sugar is floating around in your bloodstream.
Yeah.
Right? So that A1C number, we're all familiar with it. Love it or hate it. We believe it's a lag measure, not a lead measure. Right?
Sure.
So you're measuring downstream, not upstream. That's why we love fasting insulin. Right? Which was me when I finally got my fasting insulin tested. I was like, whoa, 22? It should be less than 7 or 5? What the heck?
Yeah.
The secondary outcome measures here, Tommy, are going to be weight, BMI, waist, hip, circumference measurements, which was huge, body composition measured by bioimpedance, fasting blood glucose, fasting insulin, HOMA-IR, and metformin dose reduction. So I love the fact that the literature is now starting to talk about reducing medications and hinting towards reversal of this issue.
Yeah.
And adverse events, which I'll just tell you right now, there were no bouts of hypoglycemia in any of the people in this study.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually fasting, we've heard from a lot of folks, a lot of listeners, and a lot of just, emails, within coaching and outside of coaching, that were hesitant for the diabetic patient when it came to fasting, because just like you pointed out earlier in the conversation, they were thinking that they would need some extreme fasting measures, and that just felt so out of reach, unbelievable, like not doable.
I can't do this, almost unattainable.
Sure, yeah, and because a lot of times folks in the blood sugar management or mismanagement realm and diabetics realm have heard that they'll need at least a 36-hour plus fast in order to start kind of moving the needle and things like that. And that can.
And now there are absolute benefits to doing that. By the way, disclaimer, not medical advice. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not talking medical advice here, but to your point, it's very real.
Yeah. And there's a hesitancy with coming into fasting because of that gap right there between what I'm doing now and then feeling like there's this need for this big drastic fasting measurement right here. And so to come into a study like this, where, like you mentioned, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., a 12-hour fast, and that was only in the fasting plus caloric restriction group. The other group, that one guardrail just wasn't in place. And so if they woke up at 6 a.m., they could start eating then. Or if they wanted a snack at 10 o'clock at night, they could potentially have that too. They weren't encouraged to, but it was just, they just had to stick to their caloric restriction. So it's very approachable. It's very doable. It's not drastic at all. But then to see things like A1C start to move, to see visceral fat start to move, and then to also note that this is going along with, like you said, roughly 20% protein, where we know that's a big lever. We could start to really kind of change the trajectory of the results with a little bit better macronutrient optimization, for example, too.
Yep, absolutely. So let's get into the results.
Okay.
So same calories, different timing. What changed? And if you guys have been fasting, right, 12 hours. I mean, we're talking like kiddie pool, right? When it comes to fasting, like a very easy lever in terms of implementation, right?
Absolutely.
8 p.m., 8 a.m. So weight loss, the intermittent fasting group, and Tommy, I know you have the numbers in total in terms of weight loss. So IF plus CR was a reduction in 6.51% in weight, and the CR group was 4.4%.
Wow.
So in terms of pounds, what was that, Tommy?
Well, you had about a 9-pound drop in body fat mass for the intermittent fasting group, and about a 6-pound drop in body fat for just the caloric restriction alone group. And remember, that's with the exact same calorie deficit across this whole time. So a 50% better body fat mass reduction for the IF group.
Absolutely incredible. BMI came down 6% to 4%. Waist circumference came down 4.6 to 2.7%. Hip circumference came down. This is a big one, especially in this study in women. Visceral adiposity, weight distribution, men versus women. Men are typically belly, women are lower abdomen, hips, and thighs, right? Hip circumference here in the IFCR group was 3% reduced versus 0.8.
Wow.
In the just CR group.
Wow.
And then you just mentioned the body fat mass reduction as well. So with the same deficit, adding simply just a 12-hour nightly fast improved weight loss and fat loss by roughly 40 to 80% compared to the calorie restriction group alone.
Wow.
Now, again, drastic measures, more weight to lose, more severe metabolic issues, blood sugar concerns, on medications. We're talking about small levers here. We're not talking about, like what we coach on is the higher protein content, right? Let's get walking in. Let's get some resistance training to build that metabolic muscle, right? Literally the skeletal muscle to be able to help with the blood sugar management. So little small levers that we can pull. Here's a big one in terms of the A1C. If you look at the percentages, the difference in percentages wasn't that big, but the difference in 90 days, right? Just 90 days with this small levers that we're talking about here, the intermittent fasting plus calorie restriction group dropped a 0.5 point on the A1C scale compared to a 0.2 change in just the calorie restriction group.
Wow.
A 0.5 point. That can get you out of the diabetic to pre-diabetic range or out of the pre-diabetic to no longer pre-diabetic range, depending on where you are in that range, right? That's a 0.5 point is a huge improvement in just 90 days.
90 days. Yeah. You're talking about probably usually half the amount of time that would typically be recommended to wait between blood work sessions. So if you continue along that same trajectory, you might, theoretically, you could potentially continue to change that, maybe up to twice as much as you go. And that was already 2.5 times more than the caloric restriction group alone. So just adding that guardrail, that 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. guardrail, was enough to change that much. I mean, that's a small lever and a huge output.
Both groups showed decrease in medication. So 8 people in the IFCR group, 7 people in the CR group. So that's great from our perspective. The HOMA-IR, it's more of a long-term measurement, but there was still, a difference in the groups. The IFCR group actually went from the significant insulin resistance, so greater than 2.9, into the insulin resistant borderline group.
Oh, wow.
Which is a big change in the short term, considering HOMA-IR is kind of the gold standard for insulin resistance. So, that was awesome to see as well. And you really had to interpret the magnitude of the mechanisms here that we're talking about, if we look at 12-hour overnight fasting, some of you fasters out there, right, you're going to be thinking like, is that real intermittent fasting? Like, What are we doing here? 12 hours? Yeah. Like, I can definitely do that. And you're really just not eating before you're aligning more with the circadian rhythm. So what they said in the study was both arms had that mild to moderate calorie deficit. So
calories.
What they were extrapolating here was that the extra benefit is not just from fewer calories on paper. So some plausible mechanisms here, and we're going to talk about the nighttime one for sure, is really better circadian alignment, right? So our body is designed to wake up. Cortisol, norepinephrine wakes us up. Our body gets some blood sugar going, gives us some energy for the day. As the day goes on, our cortisol levels will drop and our melatonin will rise, which allows us to get good, restful sleep, right? So by putting these boundaries of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., it really could possibly, so we've got that better alignment with circadian biology, that cortisol rhythm, fasting overnight, eating during the day. It's going to reduce that late night eating and grazing opportunities, right? So many people report when they fast that sometimes they have a hard time closing their window in the evening.
Sure.
And that sets up a potential sleep disturbance and then less metabolic flexibility the next day. So one of our plausible mechanisms here is that, you're not eating at night when your insulin sensitivity is low.
Right.
Right. And then, Tommy, we talk about this often. That's a small change after 8 p.m. It's not about the calorie. It's about what your body then does and not allowing you to get into that restful repair kind of battery recharge state, right?
Yeah, the battery recharge analogy I think is a good one, because any jobs that you give your body to do, digestively speaking, it's going to have to change gears, and that gear changing doesn't just rebalance before bedtime. Even if it's a relatively small amount of food, your biochemistry has to change, and then you can't get into the same amount, the same quantity of restful, restorative sleep going into the next day. So what that means is your actual recovery is lower the next day, which means insulin sensitivity is actually lower the next day. Leptin and ghrelin, you have more of an imbalance the next day, which means cravings are off. You might be a little sluggish, a little more tired, which oftentimes means we tend to chase that maybe with a little bit of caffeine, but also we know that if we get some food into the system, that oftentimes that'll kind of change our state a little bit too. Just that little subconscious pull right there can make it that much harder to complete the next fast, or to intake more than we normally would, or a different type of food than we normally would during that next fast breaking opportunity too. And that's where one decision and one fast and one night's sleep leads to changes the next day, and those changes really do continue to add up, like links in a chain. They're all connected right there, and we can see the same thing within this study, where when we put up that guardrail, and you see a level of results that are a little bit surprising,
Right.
to the positive side. Like where did some of those differences come from? There's the same number of calories, and it's not all that restrictive, right?
Yeah, not from a fasting perspective on how we teach fasting, right? So really just the plausible mechanisms, and then we're going to talk about, we just alluded to some of them, is those possible changes in insulin dynamics, your hepatic glucose output, your leptin adiponectin signals for hunger cues. Obviously the mechanistic marker here beyond HOMA-IR wasn't measured. So these mechanisms are hypothesized, but we've done other studies and looked at this where you get that metabolic benefit. So one thing I would have loved to have seen studied here was hunger, sleep, stress, and eating behaviors. What were some of those long-term lifestyle adaptations that we saw?
Yeah.
Because to see these changes with such a small, lever of fasting and timing, it's really encouraging. Not a final verdict here, but it's really encouraging to be hey, if this is going to work for people that. And in this group, the diabetics were kind of in that 1 to 1.5 year diagnosis. That was that median duration of how long they've had it. Those folks are going to be more metabolically flexible than someone with 10 to 15 years of type 2 diabetes. So for me, I had probably a handful of years of that high insulin. I had not yet tripped, over the tripwire into the pre-diabetic or full-blown diabetic group. So just for a big picture here, again, we don't necessarily need the aggressive type measures to still see long-term sustainable lifestyle changes. So I would have loved to have seen them measure quality of life, hunger, quality of life scores, hunger, sleep, stress, and changes in the eating behaviors. But we can extrapolate some of that stuff just with our experience and how many people that have, we've coached or taken through our challenges or taught our own personal experiences here. Those N=1 scenarios where people report back just these amazing changes when they start to ramp up into longer fasting windows, more protein, and more kind of consistent fasting efforts rather than just this baseline 8 to 8 requirement or recommendation here in this study.
That brings up a good point, which is that depending on exactly how far along into your fasting journey you are, how insulin sensitive or resistant you are, how much weight you have to lose, or maybe you're hanging out at maintenance, this kind of 12-12 protocol might not even be enough like for me, it's not enough to maintain my results with a
Right.
12-12 fast. And
No.
I think that's a good distinction too,
Episode 311,
right?
right? Foundational
Yeah.
fasting.
Foundational fasting, you're not going to find my foundational fasting at 12-12.
Mm-mm.
But at the same time, it can be a great place to start. And then it can also be a great place to, feel out some of the fear of regain, or like, can I maintain some level of control after some results, especially if you're new to fasting. This is a great way to kind of get going with it. This is also a good way to kind of get back on track with your fasting too, because even if you do need more fasting than this to maintain maintenance control over the scale, to feel better, or maybe you have some more weight to lose and
Yep.
this isn't really moving the needle for you, this is still a good way to get back on track, because the ability to set your timer and draw that line in the sand for yourself and go, you know what, yeah, okay, maybe
You're
I
like
used to do.
creating a clear rule.
Yes, and also a runway for yourself to actually succeed with it too, because if it's been a while since you've set your fasting timer, or maybe you're used to doing longer fasts, or you used to be able to pull those off, but hey, lately you just haven't been able to, despite your best efforts, then do this, drop the expectation down temporarily and jump into a 12-12, or a few days or a couple of weeks of fasting like this, but set your timer along with it too,
Yep.
so that you drew that line in the sand and you remembered what it was that you were shooting for, and then do it. You start to build that trust muscle with yourself. It's going to be much easier to get from a 12-hour fast up to a 16 or 18 or a 20-hour fast over the next couple of weeks than it would be to continue to just try to go from not fasting at all back up to the glory days, or the old high score
Right.
that you had, trying to get there. Let's shorten that bridge there. Let's make that step to the next best fast that much shorter, right?
Yep. And if you're looking for guidance on that, we've got the blueprint to fasting for fat loss, where it gives you kind of a 4-week ramp up on how to keep building on those fasting efforts. But I love the simplicity of this trial, right? Because it's like we have a randomized trial in a real world type situation with diabetics that are on metformin within the last 1.5 to 2 years. And it's truly just showing that just tightening up the overnight window without changing your total calorie intake, right? Those food decisions produce more weight loss, better body composition, and a larger drop in A1C in only 12 weeks. It's not magic, right? But it's another tool that we can personalize for you.
Yeah.
That you can take action on and just kind of take the pressure off sometimes, where it's like more push. But no, like sometimes it's the simple foundational stuff that really gives us that mindset shift that allows it to become more of a lifestyle and more sustainable, right?
Yeah. And speaking of sustainability and lifestyle wise, just a shout out to the idea that like I came into fasting with a lot of history with a calorie deficit, counting calories, counting macros, all that kind of stuff. And this study marries the two. And so like, it's okay to bring some of your old, like if you're comfortable tracking, or if you want to see, hey, I need a tangible caloric deficit here to feel like I'm doing something, to feel like I'm on track, and it helps to keep you motivated, then cool. Like bring in a caloric deficit. It can be deliberate every single day. That's fine. Especially 500 calories is a great
Fasting pretty
place.
much does that for you anyway.
It does. So it's really not necessary. But what I encourage everyone is, you don't have to be. It's not a black or white thing. It's not a dogmatic, mutually exclusive thing. So you could do your fasting, and you could do your foundational fasting. You could do fat loss fasting with or without counting a caloric deficit. It's okay to do both, to put the two together. And you can see here from the study, this is just a great example that a little bit of diligence and consistency really does go a long way.
Yeah, and I love the fact that this study was in women too, because we've changed our tune on this over the years, where it's like, you really, like for proper hormone production and cortisol and HPA axis stress response for women, which is more sensitive than in men, you need the breakfast. It's going to set you up for success for the remainder of the day. So we've changed our tune over the years on, just do OMAD dinner. No, like we really want to see you shift your window earlier in the day too.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean just a grace fest. That means those intentional food choices, healthy fats, quality protein, those types of things. So
absolutely.
I love this study and the fact, and hopefully the message landed today, Tommy, that it really just shows sometimes you don't need the extreme, really or those punishing protocols to see real metabolic change. You don't have to have fear, right? If you are a type 2 diabetic and you're being told that this isn't going to work for you, you just need consistency, right? A consistent fasting window, consistent intentional food choices, and you'll absolutely see meaningful weight loss, blood sugar improvements, A1C, et cetera, in just a matter of weeks, not months. So
great.
I absolutely love the conversation. If you guys are looking for more support, you can head to the show notes. You can grab the research link if you want to nerd out like us. You can grab the blueprint to fasting for fat loss. We're here for you. We're on this journey with you. We want to encourage you. We want you to know that it is doable and that we're absolutely here to help Tommy. So, man, as always, I appreciate the conversation so much, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.